Cultural Heritage 2.0.
Quantitative analysis tools for cultural heritage organizations. This video is a practical example based on the lecture slides that have been provided. We will use an existing database, the World Heritage List from UNESCO, which can be found at this, which can be accessed at this link, and has all the locations of UNESCO's World Heritage sites around the world. And we will then use Google Looker Studio to create a visualization of the data in the database as a way of showing the whole workflow from database cleaning organization to data visualization. We'll navigate to whc.unesco.org/en/list or type World Heritage List UNESCO. We're going to try and recreate a map with our own data visualization software. And as you can see, we can download the list of heritage sites in different formats. What we want now is the XLS format, so we can just click here to download it. After we check the terms and conditions, we can go down to this list and choose the format we want. I would go with Excel, XLS, so you just click on that and you download the file. It's very convenient for us to work within Google, since we will be using Looker Studio, which is part of the Google Suite. So for this example, we'll be using Google Drive, and we'll be creating the database, the data set within Google Sheets. So if you don't have Google Drive, you can still, you need a Google account to access Looker Studio. So we'll go to Google Drive, create a folder where we can put our files. So for us, it will be Cultural Heritage Lessons. And then I will be going to the folder, the download folder, where my Excel with the list of World Heritage sites was downloaded, and drag it into the folder. Now that will create a copy of the file in Google Drive remote, cloud-based copy basically. And I'd like you to open that. Now that will open as a non-native Google Sheet file, which is fine, but I'd like you to now go to File and then Save as a Google Sheet, so that we can work with it nicely and connect it properly to Google Looker Studio. So now we have a copy. Might be confusing because we have multiple copies open, so let's close all of them, go back to the Google Drive folder, refresh, and we now see we have two copies. One is an X for Excel, the original Excel file, and the cross is the Google Sheet version. So I'll go ahead and delete the Excel and rename this to World Heritage Sites 2021 UNESCO. Right, it's just so that I can search for it if I only remember UNESCO later. Okay, now if I open that, I will see UNESCO has an extensive database. We're going to try to figure out what's in here and what's useful for us to keep. As you see, all the columns are rather short. You can select all the columns with Command A, or just click on the first one, Shift, click on the last one, select all the columns, and then drag to make them larger so that we can properly read the descriptions on top, the field. So we have a number of columns or fields, and then we have records. Each line here is each row is an entry for one of the World Heritage sites. So it goes down all the way down to 1,155, which is brilliant. Now we have there are some things here which are very specific to UNESCO's way of archiving it, which we can get rid of for the purposes of this demonstration. For example, the unique number code and the ID number and the revision numbers are not useful for us, so we can shift and click the three columns and right click or control click to get the pop-up menu, and then delete the columns that we don't want to keep. So I repeat, we just select column 1, shift, then click on the other columns that we don't want, control click or right click, and then delete columns we don't need. Now, here column A now has the name in English of the location, then the name in French. I think we might want to keep both of those. Then we have a short description of the site in English. It starts with a P because it's HTML ready, so it can be used within a web-based context. I will keep both the English and the French for the time being. Justification criteria. Criteria used by UNESCO to classify the site as a World Heritage Site, right? So they go letter I, 1, 2, 3. So we can keep them here for the time being. We will not necessarily have to show them within our visualization, but it's let's keep them in the database. Now, the date inscribed is the date when the site was actually listed in as a became part of the list. Then secondary dates are further updates, internal updates. We might not need them. In fact, again, we can right click and delete that column. Now the danger list you see has is connected to the danger value goes from 0 or 1, and it's connected to this danger list whereby records with a 1 are basically listed in a special list of sites in danger, and this is the date when this was recorded as an endangered building, for example, endangered site. And other buildings have been taken out of danger state, so the column reports the years within which the particular site was in danger. So we can keep that just in case we need it. Now this is very important. We have longitude and latitude. These are values that we'll need to create a georeference map for all the locations. And this is a measure of the coverage, the surface area of the sites. Let's keep it in there in hectares. We might not need it, but let's keep it in there. Now, all these categories have to do with the criteria for being enlisted, and so we don't necessarily want them for this demo now. So let's select, shift, click, and select all the columns we don't want. So I don't want that. We don't want columns basically N to X. So we shift, click, and select them all, and then delete all these columns, just to keep it simple. What we're left with is a category column, which we can keep. It says cultural or mixed or natural. So depending on the type of site, there's a shorthand for that same category. We can keep it. We might not need to use it, but we can keep it. Now we have the name of the state where the site is located in English and French. We can keep that. Also because it can be useful for map and data visualization purposes. We also have the region, as in global region in English and French. I would also keep that just in case we need to do some subgrouping or select specific areas. And then we have some specific ISO codes and other codes which we are not going to need for this example. So I think you can go ahead and shift click on these 3 columns and delete them. Right. Now, we've done a bit of data preparation, especially because we've opened that in Google Sheets, and maybe there's some conversion issues. There's something we'll need to do with latitude and longitude before we can actually work with Google Looker Studio. So I'll show you that in just a moment. We will need to combine these 2 columns into comma separated values, okay? Because that's the way Looker Studio recognizes geographical coordinates. Okay, so to show you how we can connect that data set to Google Looker Studio so that you can see how that the different fields are interpreted. So you want to go to lookerstudio.google.com, and if you don't have a Google account, you'll need to make one and sign up for that. Most institutions with the Google Suite will be able to access Looker Studio without any problems. Mind you, we've chosen Looker Studio for this demonstration, but very similar principles will apply to other tools, including Tableau and Flourish, like I mentioned in the lesson. When you access Looker Studio, you can create a new blank report with the plus button and title report. The first thing you need to do now is connect some data. Now, as you can see, you can connect various types of sources. Now, for us, what will be useful is the Google Sheet connection, but you can actually upload CSV, comma separated files. You can connect to servers. You can connect to all sorts of data sets, JSON files, XML, so on. So for us, that's why I wanted you to use Google Drive. We connect to Google Sheets. We click on that. And of course, we are logged in with the same credentials. So you will be able to browse through your Drive, and we should be finding something called UNESCO. So you can search for it if you labeled it properly, and there it is, UNESCO WHC sites. Okay, now within that we only have 1 tab. Remember, there's just 1 tab for 2021. That's the year for the data, and so we only see 1 tab here. There would be more tabs. If there would be more tabs, they would show here. So we select that, and we can use first row as headers, which is fine because we're going to have row 1 has the headers, which are going to be giving names to our fields, and include hidden and filtered cells. If you've hidden cells instead of deleting them, it's up to you whether you want to keep them in or not, or specify ranges. Now we're going to add that source. And confirm. Okay, now this is our initial untitled report. We're going to call it UNESCO WHC data visualization. Right. By default, it comes up with a table, but we'll be talking about that in just a moment. Now, before we start building anything or adding anything, we need to still fix a couple of things about the data. So what I'd like you to do is consider this button, Resources, and Manage Added Data Sources. Now, this is very important, very useful to go back to it. It's a list of the sheets and other sources that are connected to your report, and you can edit the connections for all the fields. Once we're in here, we can see that each field, so each column has a name. We can actually change it here without affecting the original spreadsheet. And more importantly, we can assign a value or a data type. So some fields could be numbers, some fields could be text, some fields could be dates, fields could be Boolean logic values. Some fields, and this would be the important aspect for us, will be geographic data. So you can categorize it by continent, subcontinent, country, blah, 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 so on. And then what's really crucial for us to build a precise map with georeferencing is the latitude, longitude. As you can see, they are comma separated. So Google takes latitude and longitude as a single field, as a single column value. The moment we have two columns here, and they're numeric values. So we'll have to do something about that. And as far as dates are concerned, we don't need to worry too much. We have the date values for example, when the date was, when the monument was, or the site was added to the list. They come up as numeric values. That's actually fine. You can still work with that numeric sequence. In fact, if you try to change it to year, it comes up with an error message because it needs to be converted to a supported format. So since we don't have to worry about that, we can still do year-based analysis even if it's recorded as a number. It's fine for this example. The aggregation can also be changed for numeric values. Of course, in particular, you can change it so that the aggregation is in form of a sum, average, counting individual values, giving you minimum and maximum, the median values, the standard deviation. We'll leave things as they are for now. Right. This is also useful because whenever you make a change to the original data set or the original sheet, especially when you make changes to the field names or you add different columns, you will need to go back to this source resource manager and refresh your fields so that the system will look for connection changes to the original data set. The beauty of being connected to a live spreadsheet is that you can add information or you can add records to the data set and it will be added automatically to the report. There's a data freshness value here, which allows you to decide how often data is refreshed. And you can also, once you're done setting this up, you click on finish and you click on close, you will see that on the three dots here, you can refresh data to refresh your connection to the field manually, to the sheet manually. But now we have to fix the lat long issue. So we go back to our spreadsheet, we look for the lat long column, and we need to fix this. Now, there's different ways. If you're lazy, I, for example, tend to use an extension which is called Power Tools, which allows you to combine and perform a number of operations between columns, cells, and sheets without inserting particular formulas. So in this case, we would merge, for example, values into a column, and in each selected row, values separated by comma in the new line, and then skip empty cells and place the results in right cells so that we'll get a list of lat and long in column L. We could do it this way and merge. Now you see you have longitude and latitude here in a single column. Now I'm going to undo this. And we also want to make sure that things are in the order that Google wants them. So let's go back to Looker Studio. Let's go back to our resource and edit and check this field and geographic. It says latitude first, comma, longitude. So we need to take that into account. Latitude first and longitude next. Order the order here. So let's imagine you don't have that plugin, the add-on, sorry, and you can still do this in a very easy way. So using the concatenate function, all we need to do is go after and select the longitude column, insert, select the longitude column, right click or control click, insert a column to the right. We name it latitude, longitude, or lat long. And then we need to type in a formula here, which will be equal concatenate. We need the whole thing to actually append strings one to another. You can always look up in Google and see how concatenate is used, but for the purposes of this demo, we'll just use the simple formula, which is concatenate. Then we'll need to say the which cell should go first. Then we'll need to put the separator, which is the comma for us, and then the second cell. And then we'll replicate through across the database. So like so, we concatenate K2, which is this cell, then comma, then within quotation marks, we put the separator, comma, then another comma, and the second cell that needs to be concatenated. Now we return that, and we even get the option to autofill, suggested autofill. Yes, I'd like to do that so that I don't have to replicate it across more than 1,000 times. Now we have what we need. We can actually keep this because some other software, such as Tableau, likes the lat long values to be in separated field. But now we have it. So we go back to Google Looker Studio. At this point, we do need to refresh the fields, as I mentioned, because we have a new field called lat long, and we apply that. Now we scroll down, we find lat long, and we assign the type to be geographic, latitude and longitude. You're changing this, you can confirm it, and now we have a geographic value, at least. There's also other geographic values in here. We have a state name in English, so we might be able to use that as a geographic value, country. And we also have a region, but it's continent. It's subcontinental subdivision. So we can try subcontinent. Let's see if that understands it properly. Now, when you're done with that, we can finish and close. Now, we can start to build our first visualization. We can drag across the default chart that comes up and backspace to delete it. And it's very easy to work with Google Looker Studio. This is another reason why I've chosen it for this demo. With the various options on top, you can add different types of charts that will be using the connected data sets. For the first visualization, I'd like you to create a map. We're going to do to create a map with locations, the specific locations for each World Heritage site. So bubble map is what we want. We have bubble maps, field maps for areas, heat maps for concentration, line maps for connections, and geochart for country areas. Now let's go with bubbles. You resize it, make it as big as you want. Let's make it big at first. You see it has already identified some geographical values, and it's started to put dots on the map for us. The problem is at the moment it's pointing to states. So you see we have Canada, we have US, so we have individual states rather than the location of the sites, and that's not what we want. Now, this first column here is the setup, the configuration, and the data sources, the different types of fields are listed on the right. So what we want to do is change this field location to lat long. You can do it in two ways. You can find your lat long here and drag it across, or you can click and should list all of the fields available here. And we can change that to latitude and longitude. Now we start to see all the locations. The way Google uses maps, by default, it provides it with a standard like Google Map type with the, the drag, the bagman and the plus and minus, the full screen option, and the option to reset to cover the entire view. Now this depends on your screen ratio or the box ratio. And now we can try to make it a bit more square so that we don't have this duplication. But you will find there's also options on the right here under the chart option to change the style of the map from plain map to satellite if you want. And then you can you can change different themes based on the theme and layout option. We can discuss that later. We can add details and names of roads, landmarks, and labels to the maps. This becomes visible when you go up close. So, like the level of detail of the different road connections, names, and labels. Okay, our map now. Let's look at the setup configuration. At the moment, when we mouse over one of the points, we see the coordinates, which is not very useful for us. Perhaps it'd be more interesting to see the name of the heritage site. So we can change that in two ways. We can look at our fields and look for the name and drag it over, or we can click on the dimension and scroll down or search for the name, let's say in English, and change that. Now the tooltip will start to show the names. Now, the limitation with this version of Looker Studio is that you can only see one parameter in the tooltip. But below that, we can assign other features. So we can, for example, color the dots based on different criteria. In our case, for example, we could choose to organize them by, let's just say an example, by state name, so that we'll see colors assigned automatically for each state. Or perhaps more interesting to look for categories. Remember there was a field which had a category. So we go category. And that will give us cultural sites, natural sites, and sites that are mixed, so that we use color coding to differentiate. We can also, of course, we can change the size of the bubbles based on typically on a numeric value, which we don't really have here, so it's probably not useful for us. We can go to the style panel and change the bubble size, the transparency, and the border of each bubble. We could also change the color dimensions. If we don't like that particular color pattern, we can assign the values that we want. Now, since we previously used the state, it has assigned colors for each state. We can also restore the default colors, which is not undoable. And now we only see the ones for this particular map, cultural, natural, and mixed. We can change these colors if we wanted to. The other thing that will be useful at this point is to start to use some filters. So let's say we wanted to just show a particular state. There's different ways of doing that, but a simple way when you do the explorative research is to just add a control and use the drop-down list. You can position this where you want, and you can see you get guidelines to make them snap and align. Now, this tool has a different setup configuration field. What we want is the control field to be changed to something meaningful, like in our case, states. So we scroll down, we find state names in English. Now the drop-down list will have the different states. Okay. Now, when you get to this point, you can choose, it counts the records for each state, so that's a useful indicator already. But you can also deselect states that you don't want to see, or isolate a single state. So let's say we want to see all the heritage sites in Italy. one of the ones with the highest number of registered sites. So we click on only, we click outside the box, and there we go. We just have the sites in Italy. We can then use this button to zoom in and just fill the map with the area that we're interested in. And we see that in Italy, there's no mixed sites. They're mostly either natural or cultural, mostly natural, in fact. And this could be the basis for, the analysis, or one of the example analysis that we can do. Now, you could also, this is good for the explorative analysis, but you can also set filters permanently. So for the explorative analysis, well, you look at the data and try to figure out things. This is very useful. You can use these filters and then reset the filters using this button on top. Let's say we wanted to permanently filter out data so that we only always see Italy. Now we can do that here by clicking on the map and scrolling down below to the Google Map filter, adding a filter here. Or we could be adding a filter by going into File and then Report Settings. And here we can apply a filter globally to everything that we show. So let's say we do this because everything we'll look at will be just Italy. So we just want to filter out Italy. We give it a name so that we can recognize it. And we say we only include in the country list, on the list of states, values that are exactly equal to Italy. Okay, so this is filtering out everything that's not Italy in the list of countries. So we can save that and we get the same result. And now that we have the filter in place, everything else that we do, every other graph visualization that we bring in will be filtered out. So only showing us values for Italy. Now let's look at an example. Let's make the map a little bit smaller. And we add another visualization right next to it that shows us the percentage of natural versus cultural sites in Italy. That can be done either with a pie chart, since there's only two slices, it will be, or a donut chart, only two slices is fine. If it gets to more than 5-7 slices, the pie chart is confusing, so bar charts would be preferable in that case. Let's say for us this is fine. So we take a donut chart and we align it here. Right. So by default, it's taking up the names dimension, but we don't want that. We want to change the dimension to category. Right, you see now it's automatically giving us values in percentage. So we know that it's 94.1% cultural sites and 5.9% natural. In the tooltip, we also get the count value, so 48 sites and 3 sites. And this is determined here. The metric is what's being counted. Okay, so now it's set to automatically aggregate and show us something. You can choose whether you want to see percentage, difference, total, and so on. That's beyond the purposes of this demo. For us, this is actually fine, and we can just stick to this visualization. Within a window, we could choose to show, hide, or change the position of the legend in the style panel here. You can also change the size and proportion of the donut display and the position of the legend on top. There are other things that you can see. be looking, for example, at the year when the site was enlisted into the heritage list. And we can do that by creating something like this, like a time series. Only because of that formatting issue, our numbers or years are not really dates, but are numbers. So, for example, for this one, I added a chart, and you can then, when you add a chart, you can also change the type here from the top of the list here. So this is a smoothed line chart or a line chart, whatever. It also has in the style panel, it has points to show the different points for each record or for each year. But most importantly, the dimension that I'm using is the date inscribed. You see, it's a number, it's not a date. It's a number, and it is measuring then the number of records for each date. So we see a progression from 1979 with the first site being listed, with a peak around 1997 with 10 sites being recorded, and then up and downs all the way to 2021. The sorting is important because it's the order of the sequence. So the sorting needs to be configured by as in this state, and you can choose whether it's ascending or descending. Now ascending goes from the lowest to the highest value for us. You see it's still using the filter, the report filter for Italy, so we're just seeing values for Italy. And here we have a nice time series, so we could make that a little bit smaller, maybe try to squeeze that into our visualization. Align it with the other boxes. There we go. And we're starting to have something here. In the style panel, you can also show data labels. So if you want to see the record instead of looking at the axis, there's different things you can do to then optimize the view. Again, this would go beyond the purposes of this session, just to give you an introduction on how to look at quantitative data when considering heritage. Of course, you can start to create reports and tables like that. The nice thing about Google Looker is that without much effort, you can filter out, for example, now let's say I only want to look at the natural sites. You can click on the actual graph and it will isolate them on the map for me and show me the records in every visualization. You can just click again to go back. Maybe we can change the color of this to differentiate, not to confuse with the blue. So we can go to Style in the chart and change the line color. Then, you can start adding little elements, like very importantly, a title perhaps. So we can go and you can add different type of things. We've seen charts, we've seen a control for the filter. Obviously, you can add text. Okay, so we can add a text box, align it to our boxes and say UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Italy. And then select your text, change the text properties here on the right, change the font, the size, whatever you think it's appropriate. Maybe you'll need more pages, so you can treat this as a slideshow, basically add other reports in a sequence by adding a page and then maybe showing something else just for presentation purposes. So let's say this is our first slide, or let's call it dashboard. You can click on the pages button here to then edit the order of the pages, rename, delete. So this is WHC sites in Italy. And then we're going to create visualization of the most meaningful data in a table, maybe. So let's say we go with a table. Like a simplified version of a database for users. So here, for example, we could be adding a chart and simply drag in a table. Make it as big as we need it to be. This way we could also potentially see the individual sites. And mind you, this could also be on a map next to a map. So table, okay, table has fields. Fields are dimensions in this case for a table. So yes, we will need the name. Besides the name, we may also want to consider the year, again, when it was added to the list. Let me just type it in so I don't date inscribed. There we go. So it's going to be creating a new column where it's giving us the year. It's not sorted at the moment. We could be sorting as well. Now it's sorted by record count, actually. So it's all one for each record. We could be changing the record count sorting to date inscribed so that we could get a list by the most recent. Okay. Now we can also add other dimensions. Let's see, category, for example. So we could be sorting, well, measuring by record count, since this is a number, but then you can also be doing the sorting directly by clicking on the field. Let's say, for example, I'm adding another aspect, which is the area. We haven't taken that into account yet. In a table like this, I can just be clicking on the field title to sort by area. So for example, Cilento has the biggest area in Italy. Or I could be sorting by date, again, by clicking here. If I need to change any of the headers, I can just click on the side here and say, for example, just change this from name _en to just name, from date inscribed to year added. Okay, now the record count we don't really need, it's just showing ones. So we can go and click on the X to remove. That way we clean out the columns and see only what we want to see. And at this point, oops, there's a mistake here. At this point, we have a table view. We can also copy from previous slides or dashboards. Command C or Control click, copy, and Control click or right click, paste. This is our table view then of the different fields, or the most meaningful fields we have. Okay, with the option to sort. Now, once you have your report ready, you can do a number of things. You can view it in view mode, which gets rid of the editing options. And you can, of course, present it full screen to your audience. I'm going to press the escape button to go back. You can also share it, inviting people to collaborate, get the report link to share it to others. Also, download the report as a range of pages as a PDF. Okay, I guess that covers the foundation, the introduction on using databases and data visualization tools for quantitative analysis of cultural heritage. And I hope you enjoyed this session.
Cultural Heritage 2.0